Now, if the optimistic mood music emanating from Brussels is to be believed, a draft Brexit deal could be published as early as tomorrow. It appears Boris Johnson has potentially made major concessions to EU demands over the Irish border. But if he has, eurosceptic Conservative MPs suggest they may still be on board to vote for an agreement. However, amid the optimism, a reality check, even if a deal is reached, how can it be turned into law before the end of the month? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is in Westminster. Gary.
Well, encouraging news for Boris Johnson from some of the noises around Westminster today. The ERG, the eurosceptic group of Tory MPs who gave Theresa May so much pain and agony, signalling that they were open-minded about what appeared to be taking shape. Some of them went into number 10 to get a briefing. The DUP, interestingly, also part of the alliance that have been voting against Theresa May's deal, not signalling that they're going to vote with the government. I think privately, from accounts I'm hearing, agonising, but in public trying to put a brave face on it, and any minute now, if they haven't already, going into number 10 for what could be a long evening, sitting in an anteroom to be consulted about various things that are going in and out of that deal. They swam for a long time with the ERG. If the ERG did go over to the Prime Minister's side, I don't think they'd want to be alone, particularly if, as the numbers stacked up, it looked like they were the people who had stopped a deal. But that's the awkward position they potentially find themselves in tonight. The government is also fishing for support amongst the 21 Tory MPs it took the whip away from, as it were, on the other wing of the party, and trying to get Labour MPs on side. So they're obviously acting in a way that suggests this deal might just be taking shape, and there is immense hope inside the Tory party that that could happen, a deal, and that then they could use that to suggest, yes, it can all be over. It very nearly is over. To hope with the momentum of that they can try to push some more Tory MPs in their direction, and also, they hope, affect the polls outside in the country and get a bounce out there. But MPs on the other side, including some of those 21 former Tory MPs who lost the whip when they tried to block a no-deal Brexit, they are determined that whatever happens, even if a deal comes back, there must be a delay, because they feel that the speed at which all this is happening means without a delay to the Brexit date of October 31st, there cannot be proper scrutiny of any deal. The EU's chief negotiator, briefing EU foreign ministers in Luxembourg, said it was high time Britain came up with a legal text enshrining the changes it wants to Theresa May's Brexit deal.
Reaching an agreement is still possible. Obviously, any agreement must work for everyone, the whole of the United Kingdom and the whole of the European Union. Let me add also that it is high time to turn good intentions in a legal text.
In Dublin, Leo Varadkar said Boris Johnson had assured him he could get a deal with the EU through the Commons.
The Prime Minister said to me that if we could come to an agreement between the EU and the UK, that he was confident that he would be able to get it through the House of Commons. But of course, there's a few hurdles between now and then.
Westminster was still under siege from Extinction Rebellion protesters. But just down the road from here, the government was focused on mustering a majority for its deal, if it gets it, trying to woo die-hard Brexiteers who'd repeatedly helped to defeat Theresa May's Brexit divorce deal, which they thought hugged the EU too close.
All I'm happy to say is that it's a very constructive conversation, and that I am optimistic that it is possible to reach a tolerable deal, which I'll be able to vote for.
Number 10 has also been trying to woo the other wing, Tories like Stephen Hammond, one of 21 MPs who were thrown out of the party for trying to block a no-deal Brexit. There's been suggestions that Number 10 are trying to sort of peel you apart amongst the 21 who lost the whip. Some are coming into Number 10 for cosy chats, some not invited.
Well, all I'll say is that people are in different positions. I wouldn't listen too much. I mean, understandably, I understand they're Number 10 are reaching out to those people who didn't support things in March. They're understandably reaching out because, as you know, politics and ability to govern is all about mathematics, and that's having enough votes. So they need to be reaching out to everybody.
Have they reached out to you, and have they done a little bit to build up a bit of trust that maybe wasn't there before?
Well, I think that whole process of shall we say, the initial flirting is going on.
Good evening.
Gary, how are you?
Does it look like what's taking shape is something you could support, Arlene? Tonight, the DUP leader, Arlene Foster, will be leading a delegation from her party into number 10. There's speculation they could be there for some time. Wasn't customs checks at the border of Northern Ireland a red line? Privately, DUP sources are worried about the idea of customs checks on goods entering Northern Ireland from Britain, concerned at how consent is given to these special arrangements, that some will think cross the party's own red lines.
Well, it's not about a veto, it's about respecting actually the Belfast Agreement, which of course recognises that there has to be the consent of the unionist people and the consent of the nationalist people.
Is it less do or die and more delay? Can you get a different
That's a good one.
The Prime Minister's chief aide, Dominic Cummings, unimpressed by the idea of a delay. A deal tonight could create a possible path to avoiding that, but not a guaranteed one.
Well, joining us now from Brussels is our political correspondent, Paul McNamara. Paul, where do things stand?
Well, let's use Boris Johnson's own analogy. About a week or so ago, he was talking about a broad landing zone. Well, if there's any chance of a Brexit deal happening by October 31st, right now we need to be hearing the whir of slowing engines. We need to hear some wheels being lowered and a deal about to land. Whisper it quietly and cautiously. There are some diplomats here who think there might be something on the horizon. EU sources very close to the negotiating team have been telling us that the UK has been shifting its position on there being a customs union on the island of Ireland and also a shift on the Northern Ireland veto. Right now, as I'm standing here shivering in the cold, the UK's chief negotiator, David Frost, is in this building behind me, deep in negotiations. Because our source tells us that there is a chance, a small chance, but a chance nonetheless, that by tomorrow morning, the text of a deal could be delivered to 27 diplomats from across Europe. It's a small chance, but it is a chance.
And briefly, if that text is agreed, Gary's suggesting there could still be a push for an extension of that October 31st deadline. So Brexit delayed again?
Quite possibly, because there's just so much process to get through. Back in the UK, Boris Johnson would have to get this through Westminster. As Theresa May found out, that's no easy task. Right here, it would have to get agreed by 27 member states, diplomats here, and then the heads of state. And one of them said to us today, we need to be sure that the deal doesn't put our companies and our people at a disadvantage. So even if there is a deal in place by this time tomorrow, no guarantee of Brexit, do or die by October 31st.